to just starting up the conversation. This meeting is being recorded, just a reminder. And everyone, please sign in and say hello in the chat. We've had some conversations with our friends at Humanities DC. As many of you may know, Humanities DC is one of the founding partners of the DC Arts and Humanities Education Collaborative. It was Humanities DC, DC Commission on Arts and Humanities, DC Public Schools, Kennedy Center, and a few other cultural institutions that came together around this premise of the challenge of providing accessibility to all of the rich arts and humanities learning opportunities that are here in the District of Columbia for students and teachers in the public education system. And here we are, flash forward almost 23 years later, and boy, our work is more important than ever before, isn't it? Because it is all about accessibility and equity, and how we are able to help support student learning in the arts and humanities here in the district. And humanities play such an important part in the work that we do. As many of you may know, our longstanding legacy program was originally called Arts for Every Student. And we knew 3 years ago that while we worked with so many great humanities partners, the H was missing in what was called APHIS at the time. So now, as you know, we speak of office, which, for those of you that hear Tracey and I, it's not our Jersey accents, it's saying office. It's the Arts and Humanities for Every Student program. So the H is very important in our work. And we've had conversations with our friends at Humanities DC, especially relevant to their new expanded granting initiatives, and talking about how important these grants are for community-based organizations, for large cultural institutions in presenting humanities, and especially for youth programming. And that's what Andrea will share with us today, are the grant opportunities. Another thing that we've started conversation with Andrea before Corona, and we anticipate we will continue this conversation, is around assessment and how important it is for us to be looking at assessment in all of the work that we do, especially grantees and grant makers. So without further ado, I believe the presentation is loaded and ready. So
I'm here.
Are you ready?
Can you guys see me now? Yes. Can you hear me?
Hear you, definitely.
Okay.
See you.
Okay, hold on.
Oh, wait. Something's happening.
Is it coming? Yay! I literally just went to some settings and started clicking on, off, reload, and I did that 3 times. And whatever I did, it worked. Hello, everyone.
Fabulous. Okay. So, Andrea, take it away. Tracey can drive the PowerPoint if you prefer. It's up to you.
Yes, since you have it already, that's fine. And I'll just say,
okay,
that will work. Thank you.
And if you wanted to share your screen, I will still drive it for you, but the share your screen button is right next to the camera. But I'll go ahead and share my screen. Oh, actually.
Nope. Okay. Hold on. I tell you, if we weren't flexible before, we are flexible now.
Okay. That's right.
Okay, here we go.
I have had to, you got it? Okay, I was gonna pull it up. Okay.
Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you guys have gotten the background with the DC Collaborative and Humanities DC. We have numerous grant opportunities that are available, and I actually constantly talk to you, Tracey, about forwarding the opportunities to the collaborative members, because we have several that are focused youth-driven humanities programs. And now that we are, 7 weeks in, initially, I know everybody was running around and trying to figure out what their organization looked like. So now I wanted to reintroduce our grants. The deadlines are approaching for several of them. Tracey, if you could go to the slides, we'll just kind of go through everything. So Humanities DC, so you got the conversations between the collaboratives. So we were started in 1980, and there are 56 Humanities Councils throughout the United States and its territories. So I'm from Michigan. There's a Michigan Humanities Council. They all focus on humanities-driven programs, education. A lot of them do various public programming. We're all funded by NEH. We are a separate nonprofit entity. We are not a government agency or a DC government agency. So it is our opportunity to be able to do that in the District of Columbia. As you guys know, DC is different from the other state funding organizations similar to us. We're much smaller, and we have a much smaller territory to cover. So it's an interesting conversation when we're talking with the other humanities councils. Next slide. So a question that we get a lot, and you guys touched on it too, about the humanities and the arts and what is it. And I always like to provide just a slide so that people can reference back to them. And I think the three buckets that I like to talk about is our stories past, our stories expressions, and our stories values. And so most often people in the education fields are more familiar with how humanities shakes down. I think we found a lot of people who are doing humanities types programming who didn't realize they were doing humanities types programming. So all of our grant opportunities, we do require a humanities scholar to participate because many of us are program developers. We may be educators in other fields. And so if we have a humanities scholar with us as an advisor, it ensures that those humanities disciplines are smoothly woven into our programs and are highlighted. Next slide. So one of the programs we have is the Youth Media Literacy Partnership Grant, and I'll go into further detail of about the program. But the due date, which I think is important for the grant application, is coming up. It is approaching. It is May 19th. And so I wanted to bring this grant to you specifically. This is a new grant for us that you guys haven't heard about in the past. And we want to make certain that you have all the information. It's up to $10,000. And I'll go into more detail about that. Next slide. The next slide is Soul of the City. So we've done this program for several years. Last year, we had a new kind of iteration of the grant. Humanities DC has tried different things with this. Last year, they are still within the grant cycle. However, we have required lesson plans and curriculum on them piloting programs. So as you can imagine, right now, they have no students face-to-face. So really come up with some creative things. So we'll be able to add some virtual and distance learning lesson plans to our DC Digital Museum because of this pandemic. So that grant application is not due until July 31st. I'll go into detail about that too. Next slide. DC documentary short film. It is not a youth-driven project. However, I think it's general enough that I like to present it to everyone. This is our second year doing it. Last year we piloted. For many years, Humanities DC has accepted film projects, but this is our first time having an actual film grant. And so that's been exciting. We have 7 grantees currently. And so this year will be our second year. We've upped the pot of money for $35,000. It must be a DC-based project or humanities story. This year we have a story about Tent City, which is kind of the face of the homeless community in the tents. And then they actually are a block away from our office that are K Street in what's called Noma now. We have a documentary film about DC voting rights and statehood. Another is about Jazz Church at the West Presbyterian Church. I don't know if you guys have been there, but they're doing kind of the history of Jazz Church. So we have some really good and exciting stories that are coming out of our first year. So we are welcoming new projects on that. And again, that is due May 15th. Next slide. So for the Youth Media Literacy Grant Program, the funds came out of the State Federation of Humanities through Andrew Mellon Foundation, and they've done this in previous years. And this year, we were allowed to create what your program looked like. So a lot of the Humanities Councils have done public programs that unfortunately they've had to change and kind of restructure right now. Ours, we decided to do as a youth program. Oh, bless you.
Thank you.
We've decided to do.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. We decided to do
if you can, and bless you, Devin, of course.
We decided to do a youth program to examine the connections between democracy, the humanities, and journalism. And so that program we're excited to offer. There's one component of that. Some programs and some schools have, media in their title, but most of them may just offer a subset of programming in media literacy. So we definitely would like your assistance in marketing this program. If you don't have a media literacy program, any of your colleagues or schools or organizations that offer them, please share this information with them. For the applicants for this grant, we are proposing that they submit modules or lesson plans that will teach their students the fundamentals of media literacy. And of course, incorporating the humanities. Next slide. So we will award 3 grants in this for this grant program. The students must be 12 to 18. And at minimum, we'd like the program to cover 30 students. The awards will be up to $10,000. We don't ever require any preliminary applications, and incomplete or late applications will not be considered. So because you don't have to send us any kind of LOI, you just go to our website and I will tell you how to do that. And you can pull up the RFP to look at the details. Next slide. So the project period right now will be between July 15th, 2020 and March 15th, 2021. These may be adjusted, of course, depending upon what everything looks like or shakes out this summer. And again, the application deadline is May 19th. Next slide. So what are we looking for? Media literacy program, you must incorporate the humanities. All of our grants require a community partnership, whether it be your organization. Some proposed projects have fiscal sponsors. We ask for that to be outlined in the application. For this particular program, we are requesting a Pulitzer Prize nominee to work with your students and to work with your program. Funny enough, those exist in DC. They have the Pulitzer Center for Crisis Reporting that I actually have a meeting with tomorrow. And I have that relationship because of the DC Collaborative, and we'll be working with them on this grant opportunity as well. We, of course, strong scholar involvement, which is the Humanities Scholar, and then the final products, which will be the lesson plans or the modules. And then you will also work closely with the HTC grant officers, which is me and a couple other people. For this grant, it is not a 12-month period, so we will not have quarterly check-ins or quarterly projects, but we'll figure out the schedule and make certain that it syncs with the 3 grantees. Next slide, please. So what is media literacy? For all of our grant projects, we do try to define all of our keywords and all of our key elements to make certain that everybody aligns their project or that you find the appropriate synergy when you're applying. So the definition for media literacy, we got it from the Center for Media Literacy. I want to make certain that everybody holds true to that and to make certain that you are offering a media literacy program. Next slide. So the Pulitzer Prize nominee, I talked about that. So each program must have at least one nominee in the journalism category to engage with their participants. And for the application, we ask how you will engage with the project and what are the expected outcomes for the nominee. So an ideal applicant would have that relationship solidified. If not, please tell us who you're working on, how you plan to secure it, and then how you'll incorporate that person or people within your program.
Yeah. Andrea, if I can just insert, I think this Pulitzer relationship, it's really wonderful to see how it's come together. And this is true community collaboration. This was actually something, the collaborative is really good at being matchmakers, right? So we're really proud of that work. So when a healthy, lovely relationship blooms, we like to share it and, give jazz hands.
Yes, let's do that. No, I love it. A lot of times for me, when I am doing my recruitment and my research, I really do, it takes a grassroots effort because I don't want at the end of a grant period, I don't want anyone to call our office and say they didn't hear about it. Now, you may have gotten it and it may not have been relevant to you, but I don't want you to say you did not receive it, especially if you have a program that is really within that base. So I try to cover everything. I try to read. I look at attendees, who is there, who is a part of memberships. I think what I really like to get information out to is membership organizations because you can hit more people. And I don't want to leave anything or anybody unturned. And so that way, working with you guys and others, that has definitely helped me to get the word out and for me to feel secure that we are reaching all of the organizations, not just the bigger organizations who can pay membership fees to certain places, but our smaller organizations in our communities that are doing the work. So yes, thank you. Next slide. So the final products, the outcomes for the media literacy grant, again, are the 2 lesson plans. You must pilot the program during this time period, the grant period. An evaluation plan is a part of the application, and that's outlined in the RFP. There's a line item that is available for evaluation. As you all know, sometimes that's left to the wayside until the end of the program, and that is too late. And so we want to really capture that, and I know the collaborative loves that and is ting about the evaluation period. And then all of our final products are housed in our DC Digital Museum. Next slide. So for the Soul of the City grant, we will again do the financial and capacity building support for a youth-driven humanities program. The city as a classroom is a big part of the Soul of the City program. Because we're in DC, we have great opportunities to showcase humanities throughout our city. And so we are looking for programs that have 14 to 19-year-old students to explore humanities within our city and to ask and answer the critical questions about the world, which this is, again, what better place to do it than in DC. Selected partners will have the opportunity to work with the grants team as well with capacity building and subject matter expert work. And this year, what we've done, we brought in more of a trainer. And so we talked more about social emotional learning, and we brought everybody together and for the organizations to be able to network and kind of navigate the waters together. They really enjoyed those opportunities. So successful applicants will propose programs that employ social emotional learning, engage scholarship, and experiential learning. Which is my favorite, which we can do none of right now. I like to get outside. I like to go places with my daughter. And so I'm sure everybody will be excited to do that once we are allowed to. The awards for this cycle are up to $30,000. Again, no preliminary applications. And the deadline for Soul of the City is July 31st. Next slide. And so what we're looking for Soul of the City, all of the projects should have these 3 components, the experiential learning, social emotional learning, and the interactive learning. And again, in the RFPs, all of this is outlined what we are looking for specifically. Next. I kind of threw the slide in for longer presentations for each grant. I go through each of them, but just again, we make certain that we have the definitions available when I'm doing my one-on-one conversations with interested applicants. If you have any questions about any of them, I am more than available to talk to you about your application and through the components of the program. Next slide. So the final products for the Soul of the City is the curriculum. You will need to pilot your program and again, an evaluation, and the final products will go into the DC Digital Museum. Next. So incorporating humanities. So for all of our projects, you'll find that incorporating the humanities is an important piece of that. You must identify one or more humanities disciplines. I get the call a lot. Can I do more? Of course you may do more. It's very exciting when we have more than one discipline, especially if it's a history project. Don't just do history, dig deeper. And that's why we ask for you to have a humanities scholar so they can help you define the role of humanities in your project and make it more robust. Next slide. Community partnerships. So we talked about that when we were founded. Again, through community partnerships, we have worked with community organizations through our existence. And so we want to know, who are your community partners? How will the community as a whole benefit from your project? And then how will you solicit or include additional community partners as your project goes on? What will that look like? And we ask you to shape that in the application as well. Next slide. What is a scholar? That is another question that we get often. And so a humanities scholar, for our purposes, it may be a working academic professional, and that person, of course, will have an advanced degree in humanities. So Dr. So-and-so, we welcome, but we also realize that there are subject matter experts on several projects or certain topics that do not hold advanced degrees. So we do acknowledge those humanities scholars as well. What we do require for both is that you provide us how that person is going to support your project, how they're going to support that humanities discipline. And we request a resume or a CV to upload it. We have had community historians that have been a part of our project, and those people may not necessarily have a CV. And so then you would just create why are they a subject matter expert, and then you would submit that to us. You can have more than one. Sometimes people have a humanities scholar, and that community historian may be their advisor, because without that program, you want to really listen to them, talk about the timeline. They may have been there, and so you don't want to leave that person out. You want to include them, but you still have your humanities scholar to keep your scholarship piece. And so those partnerships can work really well together. And so then you just add that to your project. Next slide. So working with the Grandstaff. So when your project is the project period is a year long, we do quarterly check-ins, and we also do capacity building workshops, maybe a webinar, phone calls. We've done some face-to-face, and we've done some webinars this year that I think the grantees have really enjoyed. Again, networking is something that I found that everyone likes, so not necessarily having a guest speaker or someone to monitor or facilitate, but just bringing everybody into the room. So for the current Soul of the City grant, 4 out of the 6 programs are in schools. One of the programs is after school, so the kids go there, and one of them is a school. And so they've been able to find synergy within themselves during this year-long time. And so that has been nice to see that they are working with one another. Some of our Soul of the City grantees are working with applicants who did not receive the Soul of the City grant last year, but they met them at our grant launch party. And so those are the ways that we are able to continue our community partnerships moving forward, and building the capacity of our current grantees with one another is the engagement that I really like to see as well. So we will do that throughout the year. Again, the quarterly reports are due. There's a narrative as well as a budget update each quarter. I'm available to talk to everybody. I do site visits, and most of them are to see what is going on. I have the narrative, but just to see how you are working through the program and with the youth. And those days for me are like field trips. And so I enjoy them. Next slide. So new eligibility for Humanities DC grants for 2020. So as some of you may know, Humanities DC has some additional funds from the DC Commission on the Arts for this year and moving forward. So we have tried to align ourselves a little bit better with how they do their grant making and their regulations. So in the past, you have had to be a 501c3 organization, but we have allowed organizations that were not based in DC but do business in DC. You must be a DC-based organization. So for our documentary film, and I think documentary and our oral history, we do allow individuals, but you need a fiscal sponsor. So we've allowed the fiscal sponsor to be elsewhere if you're supporting a film. So now they must be DC-based. The organization must be registered and in compliance with the agencies below. Some organizations don't have business with them, and nor do we go out and, we don't need your Clean Hands Act. We don't need your tax documents. But when you sign on the dotted line for our grant agreement, you are saying those things are available to us if we need them, for instance, for audit down the line. And so for DCRA, for the OTR for tax and revenue, for employment and services, and for the IRS. And so if there is a check that we need to make after the grant document, you're just telling us that you are in compliance with those agencies. And then finally, you must be in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990. And so most arts and humanities programs and organizations and schools are already compliant. We have some smaller organizations that are not. And so what that looks like, it is not a difficult lift or a heavy lift, but it's being educated on what the Disabilities Act of 1990 is. And it's also preparing smaller organizations for future funding. So we are a local organization. All of the national organizations require this as well. So I look at it more of a kind of a building block, that if you have these things for us next year, you will be bigger and better, and you can continue to apply for funds, and it won't be a big shock to you. And so we can work through that and give you resources to assist in building that. And we just ask for your plan within our grant application. Next slide. So qualifying questions, again, you must be a 501c3. If it is an individual, you must have, or if you don't have a 501c3, maybe an organization that doesn't, you must have a fiscal sponsor that has such. Of course, in DC, your project focus must be DC, whether it be the neighborhood, the community, or our youth. All organizations, if you've previously held a Humanities DC grant, you must be closed out successfully, which just, you must be in good standing with us. Next. The proposed project for the media literacy is the two lesson plans, and for the Solar City is the modules or the lesson plans or curricula. And those are both detailed within the application. And then, of course, you must have the commitment of a humanities scholar throughout your grant cycle. Next slide. So additional requirements. And so the terms of the grant agreement, everything is laid out, and I just like to say it within my slides. We ask for a project team for you to name your project directors, your bookkeepers within our application. So the project director must be present at an awards kickoff ceremony, and it's usually the week of or the week before the grant period starts. And it's sometimes we, do photo ops of the checks, and then we go through your kind of first session of capacity building. So we invite the project directors, if you have a fiscal sponsor, those representatives to attend that. And it's business, but it's also a fun way to see who else received the grant and get in the room with those people, which apparently I'm hearing that doesn't happen often, and people enjoy that time. So we do that every grant. As it relates to the grant budget, we do require a one-to-one match. So if you are requesting $10,000, we require a $10,000 match of in-kind or cash. I have a lot of conversations with potential applicants about that. After we've had the conversation, they feel a lot better about it. So I'm open to those conversations as well. Again, we'll do our technical assistance. We encourage the joint marketing and communications. If there are any events or projects that you need to market through the project period, we are there available to assist you. And then again, the final products will be housed in the DC Digital Museum. Next slide. This is the project team, organizational sponsor or fiscal sponsor, a project director, a scholar for media literacy, the Pulitzer Prize nominee, and a bookkeeper. So we do require a bookkeeper. That bookkeeper cannot hold any other roles above that. So the bookkeeper has one role, and that is to keep the books. For our quarterly reports, we just ask for the templated budget to be filled out for each quarter. At the end of the grant, we do require all of the information. So you want to make certain that person is keeping tally of everything for the final report. So that is the only requirement that we have, is that that person cannot hold another role. For the DC Documentary Film Grant, the project team looks a little bit different. You would have a filmmaker. The filmmaker and the project director can be the same person, but that is an added role for that grant project. Next slide. And so the budget will look something like this that you submit. After it's submitted and we review it, once you become a grantee, we then add however many quarters your particular grant has. You will fill that in and it will be submitted to us quarterly. Those are the line items. So we ask that everybody submit that budget to us that looks this way. And your narrative can explain the additional budgeted items that you have within that category. Sorry, next slide. And so this is just an example that I provide for the match so that everybody knows that it's a one-to-one match. You know, if you're estimating project director hours, and we do allow, if you have a project director that's loaning their time, that would be considered in kind. If you have media literacy, if you have equipment that is being used, the studio, that time is in kind. And so we will help you with your budget, but definitely consider all your costs to make certain that you are outlining your in-kind and cash match appropriately. Next slide. What do we fund? So as with every other funding project, there are do's and there don'ts, and the things that we fund and we don't. And so for Humanities DC grants, we do fund, of course, all project-related supplies, venue rentals for the project, speaker and scholar honorarium, project transportation, equipment rental, marketing and promotion, exhibit design, or construction and project consultant fees. And so we do not fund the general office supplies or equipment, office rent for the space of your organization at all, food and beverage at all. Please do not put that in our budget. It can go in your in-kind budget. We got a lot of questions. How do you make a film and not feed anybody? You don't ask for the money for that. That is what you put in your in-kind and your match portion of your budget. The production of visual and performing arts projects, we will not pay for you to put on a play. That's just not what we do. We do fund playwriting, though, which is interesting, but not the production of the actual play. And then membership. We do not pay for membership for your organization or your staff to get a particular membership to an organization. Next slide. So do's and don'ts, break down your budget, please. Make certain that the budget narrative is clear. We do have grant reviewers. People are people. And so you want to make certain that everything is clear from every lens. You don't want people to guess what you're talking about. I always encourage people, and this isn't just for Humanities DC, but for every grant application that you are applying for, have someone read it. Have a friend or colleague read it. They don't have to be somebody in arts and humanities. That person will ask you questions that are void in your application. And so that's what you want. And you want to be able to fill those in. So state clearly your goals of your project. If that person is saying they don't understand it, don't get offended, because a lot of our projects are our own. And so please have an open mind when you have a reviewer, because you want to hear that feedback. Because again, reviewers will listen to they will read your grant proposal. So do try to anticipate and answer reviewer questions ahead of time and fill those in as you can. do include letters from partner organizations that acknowledge the partnership and how fantastic you are, but don't include letters of support that are just random from somebody that has nothing to do with the project or the type of work that we're looking for. So try to keep everything aligned in the grant application within, the focus of what the grant is. Next slide. Again, terms, I kind of walked through those, but I like to put those up there so the slides that we take away, you guys have. Next slide. So the last two terms will focus on 100% of the awarded grants must be applied to the direct cost of the program that you are that we're funding. So please be mindful of that. And if you do have a fiscal sponsor, if you are presenting a project and you have a fiscal sponsor, we do allow 10% of the budget to go to that fiscal sponsor for fees or administrative things that are going down. Now, what I also tell people is that really look at your fiscal sponsor. Why are you selecting this organization? If I were you, I would look at a relationship that is a win-win. So are they benefiting from it? If you are doing a program, will they be able to toot their horn and say, hey, I funded this program, or be able to use the program? And so you have some leverage that 10% of the fee may not necessarily need to come out. That could also be something that they are loaning you, bookkeeping services and things like that. So really look at it and see if you have synergy with your fiscal sponsor, and don't just pick one out of the air. Take time with that and really look at that. And then the final product, of course, is important. Is the lesson plans or the curricula. That's bound to happen, right? Bound to happen. Uh-oh, you clicked everything out. Okay, so done with that one. Next one when you get it back up. And then this is how you apply to our grants on our website. Each of these opportunities are laid out. We do have a DC Community Heritage Project Partnership Grant that is also available, as well as, I think the other ones, yes, I have highlighted them all. So please look at them so that you can look for next year as well. We have our Vision Project that is kind of more of an open project. So we accept different projects, film, youth programs. It could be anything. Last year for the DC Community Heritage Partnership Project, it was for Asian and Pacific Islander communities in DC. So we had some very, very interesting projects. I learned so much about them and from the people that presented them. One organization was the Filipino Young Professionals Organization. And they were able to tie in with a woman who lives here who has a lot of archival information that she submitted to the University of Maryland. So it was more of a generational divide that was connected. He said he never felt more Filipino than he had after doing this project, because it was the old and the young coming together. The old, they weren't chastising the young. They were helping and educating them and telling them about how they came to DC, how they were successful, how they were not successful. And so that was a really good project and very enlightening to hear. Another one, and I can't remember the tail of it, but it was about Chinatown, and the project focused on the Chinatown in DC then and now, and it also looked at Boston and Chicago and the differences in those three Chinatowns. So as we know, the DC Chinatown, there are national retailers with Chinese writing above it. And literally, there are a few, Chinese restaurants that are still available, and probably one or two apartment housing buildings that are kind of still unique to the area, but that's it. And so Boston and Chicago are totally different. Boston is busting at the seams that are moving into more of an Italian community where they need more space. And Chicago has kind of a resurgence of young people that have Chinese-owned businesses. And so looking at the tale of those three cities was one of the projects. And so we get some very interesting projects from our grants, especially from the DC Heritage Project. So this is how we apply. Go to our website. And of course, I don't know why the S is pink and everything else, but humanitiesdc.org/grants. You will find them all there. If you click one grant, you click request for proposal, you can see each of the RFPs. You can click to apply. The only way to see the full application is to go into the portal. Tracey, if you could click that, and it'll show how you log in to the next slide, just that main page of how you log into the grant application. If your fiscal sponsor of your organization has applied before, see if that person has a login, and we can create you a separate login under your organization so it won't create multiple logins. And you can go in there and print out the application. If you have any questions, please contact me. I can talk to you or any other groups about our grant opportunities. You can click through, Tracey. I think it's one or two left, but then my name is at the end. Yes, that's my information. Please do not hesitate to email me or call me. If anybody has any questions for me.
Thank you so much, Andrea. That was such a thorough presentation. It was really helpful.
You're welcome.
And I appreciate, as someone who works on grants for our organization, that there's some continuity with your process with other grant makers, because that's always extra work for the organization, right?
Right.
So thank you.
Yes.
So Karen Brown has a question for you in the chat, and it says, at what grade level or age group has been the youngest of your grants? Any pre-K or kindergarten?
Not since I have been here, but you know what? I will look into that to see historically, have they done that, and would that be something that they would be interested in? Because I also like ideas. Mm-hmm. And so what would that look like for a younger set of students and the humanities, and how that will work? Yes, I will look into that. How young? Mm-hmm. But right now, since I've been there 12.
Oh, okay. There you go. We do have a lot of teaching artists on the call today. So I encourage you all to get creative and think about ways that you can collaborate.
Yes, please.
For all grade bands. In fact, Tom, I think some of your programming certainly bridges into the humanities and sciences, some of the comic book work, and extending into documentation of women in science. Are there do you see any possibilities for yourself in sharing some DC stories relevant to your work?
Yeah, I had a question about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I was doing a film series on women in science, and I thought that might be qualified for humanities because it's also history. Is that not right?
Yes.
And I wanted to arrange it so that the students in DC could do the editing under my supervision. And
yes.
I would go out and collect the footage. And that's in line with your program too, to do it that way.
Yes, we have several programs that do more of kind of an apprenticeship. The current Solar City project, Split This Rock, the students are doing the performing, they are doing the writing. Playwrights, the students are doing the playwriting. They help them and advise. Yes, American University is the tent city, and they have a media program. So some of those students are working on the film. They are filming, they are writing, all of it. So yes, we definitely encourage that. So it becomes twofold. So it could be the documentary project, if that is the final product, but it could also be Solar City and media literacy, or threefold. So just have to look at the opportunities and see which one best fits.
Okay, great. Sounds good. I'll apply for that.
Oh, please. Thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
Okay.
Other questions?
Question for you on just pivoting a smidge and knowing that you have the DC Oral History project as well. And
Yes.
is there any overlap with some of these grant making opportunities? And Uncle Devin, I'm thinking of you in particular because you work in radio and you do a lot with audio recording. Is there some way that some of these grants can connect to the Oral History Project?
Yes, so we've had in the past through DCCHP, they have been oral history projects outside of what we have for oral history. And those, again, Devin, if you go to our website, the oral history programs are the first ones that we've had, and those are closed, but you can kind of get a better idea of what they are and how the oral history collections how to move forward. But that does not mean that we will not fund an oral history project for the DC Community Heritage Project. So those, the DC Community Heritage Project and our Vision Project are more general, and we will accept multiple projects. And so oral history is more specific to that. Documentary film is more specific. So we do have some that allow for more creativity. And again, too, if you do it in those, you are bound by what the oral history grants are. Those are some work. I didn't realize that until I started here, working with the DC Public Library and all of the ins and outs that you have to do to make it a verified oral history it is some work for some community associations. And I love that they do it because then it is surely documented the proper way, but it is, you have to get in there and learn a lot to do that properly. But yeah, look at the DC Community Heritage Project and then the Vision Project in addition to our oral history.
Any other questions? I don't see any in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourselves and share it.
And thank you guys. I really appreciate this opportunity. I see what you guys have done with the live chats. I said, man, people are working those couple of weeks just getting programs together and getting programming together and pivoting. And I'm getting these emails now. I didn't need an email from every organization that I am connected to. And it was so funny. I'm like, why did you have a pandemic email if you're not offering a service? But I think everybody felt compelled to say something. And so when things were offered, whether it was webinars or live chats, that made me smile because that meant people were really working to respond to everybody's needs, especially membership organizations. So I think you guys have something for everybody. So great job. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. We, in the case of the collaborative, we knew immediately March 16th we had to pivot. And being a member service org, we knew that's what we have to do. We had to take care of our community. And we used the vehicle we knew, and that was Zoom chat. Okay, we won't talk about Zoom chat, but reaching out this way.
Right.
Sylvia, did you have a question? I'm still learning this platform, and I apologize. I just want to make sure you got covered if you had a question.
Oh, no, I was just thanking, I was just thanking very much, Andrea, for such a clear presentation, wise advice. This was like a workshop more than a presentation, the way that you put it. And wonderful to see your enthusiasm and your interest that you have invested in all of this. So it's inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, indeed. So let's all give a big virtual applause, hug to our friend Andrea. Jazz hands. We like our jazz hands. Thank you so much. This was so informative, and I hope that this has inspired some of you on the chat today to apply for some of these grants. It's really important. These are great grant opportunities, great opportunities for collaboration and partnership with our community, because isn't that what our work is about? And it would be wonderful to see what types of projects come out about DC history now in its contemporary context, right? So I think this, especially for our youngest residents, this will be really interesting. Again, this session is recorded, so we will have this. You can play back. We'll make sure to share it with others. And thank you again, Andrea. This was really a wonderful session. Thanks.
Thank you guys so much, and have a great day. Stay safe.
You too. Be well.
Thanks. Bye-bye.